Welcome to the Beza Performance live stream. My name is Marshall Henley. I'm the president of Beza Performance. And once again, it's S&OP Thursday. We have Doug Dedman from DVM Systems with us again today. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Marshall. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Today's going to be short and sweet. We're going to do the assessment that we've developed to help you for free figure out if you've got some things you can tweak with your S&OP process. More importantly, your executive S&OP process. So, Doug, why don't you talk about why we developed the assessment?
Yeah, it's I'm pretty excited about it, Marshall. I know we've spent a fair amount of time kind of going
Yeah,
through and working on this on
it
what
was
the
hard.
assessment is.
It's a lot easier just to talk to somebody about what they're doing.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and so we went through and worked on developing the assessment because we've always used our internal assessment as part of the implementation process. Um, Fairly prescriptive way of measuring as people progress through their implementation and become more mature in the process.
Yeah.
But then it was the idea of how do people kind of figure out where they're at? How do you get a sense of what does good look like? And really, all the things that we've been talking about the last few months about what does good look like. We're in the process that we were in the process of rolling that into our assessment. And so that's why we developed. We thought it'd be good to get that documented and give people another way to evaluate where they're at, but also to get an understanding of what does good look like. So yeah.
Let's talk about where you can take the assessment. You can take it at bezaperformance.com. You'll find it there in the resources link, and it's also at the DBM site, dbmsys.com. If you have any questions, just email help@bezaperformance.com. We'll be happy to help you figure out what you need to figure out. Any other thoughts on where it's at, Doug?
Yeah, well, I actually I pulled your website up before I got on, so I thought
Oh,
I could even actually show people. So just so they're if you
let's
haven't
do it.
gone to Marshall's website, so there's a couple good looking folks down along here. But if you go to the resources, you can click on there and get to the Executive S&OP assessment, and then clicking on this Start Assessment will take you right there. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It'll take you maybe 10 minutes to go through. But that's where you can go to get it. You can also go to our website, dvmsys.com, and you can find it there. But yeah, we're kind of excited to have it up there.
All right. Um, well, let's get to the focus of the assessment. What is the purpose and focus that we used to create this?
Yeah, so I think that's pretty important. And you mentioned it right off the top when you said it's an executive S&OP assessment. And if you've been following along with what we've been talking about, or really any of these live streams or on either of our websites, you know that the focus for us is on the executive S&OP process. How do you have an executive led S&OP process? And so that is the focus. But then we looked at some key areas, which is what we've been really talking about over the last several months, and our last few sessions that we've had. And those key areas, those focus areas, and actually, if you bring up, I actually went ahead before we got on here, Marshall, and I went through and completed a copy of the assessment. And you can see those focus areas that we really are trying to highlight for people. How good are you at each one of those areas? And so you'll get that as you go through there.
My screen was wiggling a little bit, so I'm going to put it back up and see if it
Okay,
looks better.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
still wiggling. I'm not sure what that's all about, but
Okay. Hopefully, it's not too wiggly that people can't see it, right? So,
it's
but
fine.
yeah, so you can see the different areas that were in there. It will score you on each of those areas. Unfortunately, with the tool that we had, we couldn't really weigh each area, so they're all kind of weighed the same. But we've really tried to focus on the major success criteria
Right.
for S&OP. So if you think about it, having the right family structure, and then how do you set up your executive presentation? So I won't go through all the detail there. You can see scoring. You'll get I think this is called a web diagram, right? That basically will give you the areas that you need to go in. Now, what we did with this is, besides just giving you that general information, is we've actually created a document that you will get out of here that will identify and go through kind of a prescriptive idea of how should you structure your family, and then identify whether this is an area you need to focus on. So on this one here, family structure was quite good, so it didn't matter. But if I go forward, you can see on this second section, which is the executive presentation, that this is identified as a significant area of concern. So you can
Yes.
think about it almost like triaging your S&OP process to say, hey, what are the pieces I really should kind of focus on, with a pretty good description of what we would, really suggest is kind of the right approach to go in there. So there's a fair amount of meat here. You'll end up with,
Mm.
I think it's about 15 pages. Some of that's will be specific to you, but a bunch of that will be really kind of defining some of those areas so you know where to focus.
Yes. Yes, and I thought we did a really good job of helping define terms, where the terminology can be varied in different
Yes.
processes and that kind of stuff. So, um, let's talk a little bit about who we think should take the assessment.
Yeah, so this is great, because I think anybody who's got an S&OP process now. So if you've got one going on and you're not quite sure how well it's working, and the specific one that we've been talking about is, if you've got a executive process but your executive is not engaged, right,
Yeah.
and you're trying to put your finger on why not, I would say take the assessment and look at that, because this is really
Mhm.
geared towards the
Yes.
executive part of that process, right?
Yeah, in
Um,
fact, the entire series that we're kind of taking a break this week on is what does good look like, and it matches the categories in that web diagram, that web chart that you saw. But we started that whole series and continue with it to say that the purpose of an S&OP process is to get to an executive presentation where you can get approval or actual accountability from an executive on the forward-looking 12-month or more plan. And so
yep,
that's where I think that's a really important component of what you could troubleshoot if your executive is
yep.
not engaged.
I would recommend you take it if you have a process in place. If you don't have a process, it might not
Yeah,
be the spot to start, because it's really hard to benchmark
you're
something.
not going to score very well if you don't.
You're- There's a good chance you're probably not going to score well. Yes, so it's hard to
I
bench.
would suppose you could go through and just guess, and you're going to get enough prescriptive text about the stuff. If you got 100%, there'd be enough prescriptive text to kind of help you
Yeah,
understand what an S&OP process is. So if you
yeah,
got 0 or 100, I guess there'd still be that kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I think on the other part of that, who is, if you look at your organization, I would strongly recommend having more than one person take it. So if you've identified who your key players are in the process, people that are engaged in it, have them each go through the assessment independently. Um, Main reason for that is that you'll get a broader perspective of how people feel the process is working, or the engagement level. And I know, as part of our implementation process, one of the things that we do early on is that discussion with multiple executives, really kind of digging in. How's it working for you, right? And
Right.
and it's always interesting. You can ask four different people. Sometimes you get five different answers, right? So
Yeah.
it's that's an important part. So having multiple people do it and then compare your answers, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I love that idea. Um, I guess let's set some expectations because I don't want people to think it's going to take them 2 hours. Well, could take 2 hours to, you know, go through a meeting and talk about the prescribed improvements. But what can folks expect? Let's
Yeah,
talk
I
about
mean,
that.
yeah, you can go through it pretty quickly. I think there's like 24 questions. You can probably get through it in 10 minutes. If you really want to think about the questions, it can take you a bit longer. I would strongly encourage, once you've gone through it and done it, then spend the time digging into the report. You get it online. The one I was showing you was the online version. You'll get it emailed to you as well. Yeah, but 10 minutes really to go through it. It's not an onerous, series of questions
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah.
And certainly we can mention that it's no cost. The assessment is available at bezaperformance.com or at dbs.com, and that it's free. The idea there is just to help you kind of get your process moving to the next level, whatever your process is. And if you need help, then just email us at help@bezaperformance.com. We'll see what kind of help you might need. So,
Yep. I think
I
that
think that,
probably sums it up, Marshall.
yeah, that's it. So this is the second week of October, so it'll be the 27th of October. We'll do our next one, and that'll be picking back up on the "What Does Good Look Like" series. Doug, what's the topic for that week?
Well, we're going to be hitting. If you look at the assessment page here, we'll actually be hitting the responsibility and accountability section there. And so, as we kind of been working through each one of those, what does good look like? That's the one that we're on.
Okay.
Always a fun one.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I think the whole series is excellent. So if you go to bezaperformance.com, you'll see recordings of all these in the videos section. And until the 27th, have a great week.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Marshall. Bye.
Oops.